Chantelle. And Chantelle's going to take us through, in this first section, British Canoeing Access. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Dave. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me this evening, and thank you for your interest in the Clear Access, Clear Waters campaign. I thought I'd share a little bit about myself before I launch into the whole Clear Access, Clear Waters side of things. My first experience with paddling was part of my Duke of Edinburgh award, actually. And I went along to my local swimming pool and had the first session. That seemed to go well. Missed the second session, so went back for the third session, and I said to my coach, "Oh, what happens if I fall over, if I roll over?" And he said, "Oh, you'll be fine, you won't." He turned away to talk to some others, and within those few minutes I'd actually rolled the canoe. I was upside down, flapping around in my local swimming pool. Felt like a lifetime to actually come out, but eventually I did. So I can't say I took to paddling like a duck to water, but I certainly didn't give up. And since then I've continued to actually paddle. And then obviously a couple of years or so ago, I got the job at British Canoeing as the Access and Environment Officer, and joined my local canoe club. And I now paddle with Lincoln Canoe Club, and I paddle most weekends when we're actually allowed to paddle, and I absolutely love it. It's something that I'm really passionate about. So today I thought I'd share with you about the Clear Access, Clear Waters campaign. So I'll just share my screen with you. Can everybody see that? Yeah, lovely, great. To me, this kind of sums up what Clear Access, Clear Waters is all about. This is after the first national lockdown, and I was finding things quite stressful. I was wanting to get away from it all. So I booked a camping holiday for me and my daughter off to Norfolk. So we headed off with the tent, and we went to a little place called Dilham. And this is the little canal there. And I think this kind of sums up why a lot of people paddle. It's about that engaging with the environment. It's about that blue space. It's about that relaxation. And I think what the COVID situation has really done, it's actually really emphasized how important being in touch with nature is to us, having that time to relax and take in our surroundings. I think there's a lot of people who went on staycations last year because of COVID, and I think again, obviously they're going to be really popular again this time. People have been out exploring the local places, trying different activities. And I think paddle sports in particular has seen an increase because of this. There's 2.1 million people who are annual participants now in paddle sports. And the British Canoeing membership has increased from just over 30,000 to over 64,000 now. So this is, it's absolutely great for paddle sport, and it's great to get out there and be with nature. And my job is fantastic because I get to work for the campaign, which is actually finding more places for people to paddle. But the thing with paddling is it's not always clear where you actually can paddle. In fact, on 97% of waterways, the right of navigation is actually contested on those inland waterways. And there's a long debate, and there's two schools of thought on this. One of those thoughts is that our waterways, our rivers are private, that they're off limits, that they belong to the landowner. The landowner owns the bank, and the landowner owns to the centre of the river. So that gives them some right to control the navigation. But there's another school of thought, and this is the school of thought that British Canoeing signs up to, and that is that we believe that under common law there is a public right of navigation on all rivers that are physically capable of being navigated. So this is some of the challenges that paddlers sometimes find when they're out on the water. And this isn't just paddlers, sometimes this is swimmers as well, where access is prevented. The long debate has been going on for over 60 years. So it's how do you change it? How do you change that status quo? How does access for paddlers work in the 21st century when we know more people are out there enjoying paddling? So in 2018, we launched the Clear Access, Clear Waters campaign, and this was very much a campaign which came from the heart of the paddling community. There was a lot of engagement with our members to find out what paddlers were wanting British Canoeing to do about the access situation. And the message was clear that you were wanting that clarity in the legislation to confirm fair, shared, sustainable, open access. And with a code on that, a code of conduct for all users to make sure that that access is sustainable. So in 2018, we went down and we launched the charter in Westminster, asking for that clarity in the legislation, but also pledging to protect the places that we paddle, to protect the environment, to protect our rivers and to protect that blue space. As part of the campaign, we actually launched a Clear Access, Clear Waters website. And that actually has the petition on there, which we're asking paddlers to sign up to ask the government to clarify the legislation. We've got just over 10,000 signatures on that at the moment. So that would warrant a written response from government, but we're really keen to get more uptake, get more signatures on there. So the campaign split into a number of parts. One of those parts is very much on that policy side of things. And there's a lot happening. There's a lot of noise at the moment with all the Brexit side of things. We've got the agricultural bill going through. We've got the environment bill happening. And there's been the government 25-year plan, A Green Future. All these changes are all providing an opportunity for us to put our case forward for fair, shared, sustainable, open access on inland waters. So with the agricultural bill, the key mechanism for that is how landowners will be paid for public good. The Common Agricultural Policy will in effect be replaced by ELMS, which is the Environmental Land Management Scheme. And we see that there's some real opportunities there to incentivise landowners to improve the access to the water. And I'll just be clear on that, that is access to the water. That isn't looking at paying for landowners a right of navigation on the water. And we've just actually put forward some details through to a government inquiry onto the Environmental Land Management Scheme about doing some trials on access to fully understand how that could work, how interested landowners would be in that. Because I think there are a lot of landowners out there that see you know, recreational paddling as something positive, and I think it's just looking at how we can incentivize them to almost get them over the line, if you like, to get them on board with providing that access. We're also doing a lot of work on the environment bill. So this is very much focused around the conservation side of things, and we want to see the access side of things pulled through on the environment bill much stronger. So we're working with the Open Spaces Society, the BMC, the Ramblers, Cycling UK and others to really raise the profile of access, so that is included with some really strong targets around access, and that access is included in rights of way improvement plans, which are the plans that local authorities have and use to take into account of access in their areas. We feel that for people to love their environment, they need to experience the environment, and to experience it and to have that connection for it, they need that access for it. And I think as part of future funding off the back of the Environment Bill, again, absolutely key that we get access in there. So this is all linking into the government's 25-year plan, and this is all around a green future. Again, it's all around sustainability, nature conservation, protecting against the climate crisis. But it's also about connecting people with nature. So access on water is really fitting in with that key policy of government. The other area that we're looking at from the policy side of things is around getting this clarity in legislation. So the Ag Bill, ELMS, the Environment Bill, they're all taking us those steps closer. But to actually get that change in legislation is the absolute goal, to get that clarity. And there was a piece of legislation in 2000, the Countryside and Rights of Way Act. And this is the legislation that introduced open access land. So that was open access where you can walk on mountain, heathland, moor and downland. But waterways were actually excluded from that. Vessels were excluded, bathing was excluded. And this was a real missed opportunity. And that is something that we're currently exploring, how the Crow Act could be used as a mechanism to enable the access on the water, to get that clarity that we're absolutely looking for. So alongside all that policy side of things, we've launched the website, we've got the petition live at the moment, we're asking people to sign up to that. We're also asking people to talk to their MPs about the campaign. I think access on water is sometimes a little unknown. People kind of presume that you can get a kayak and you can just paddle on water. People don't always know that there is actually a little bit of an issue there. So please do talk to your MP about access on water and why it's important to you. And the final part of the campaign side of it, if you like, before we start to go on that environmental side of it, is championing all the great work that paddlers do. So I'll come on to the paddle cleanups later. The invasive species side of it I'll pick up on, and also the water quality. But I think as a community, we really need to shout and celebrate our achievements and engage with local media, engage with local councillors. It might be at your city council, it might be at your county council. There's a lot of potential and opportunities coming out around the green social prescribing side of things, and access on water, people being in that blue space, getting involved in paddle cleanups, all connects in nicely with that. I think the other side as well with paddling and connecting in with your local authorities is all around that tourism side of it. And this goes back to that photo that I showed at the beginning with me and my daughter, on the staycation in Norfolk. Paddlers have a lot to offer for that local tourism. The local pub will be used, local campsites, even paying the parking fees that will often go through to the local authority. So there's a real opportunity. And I think there's also a real opportunity for landowners as well within that. On that campsite we stayed in at Norfolk, there was lots of glamping sites. So real chance for a little bit of diversification, if you like. this is, again, this is to me what fair share sustainable access looks like. This is back in Lincoln, and this is my daughter on the Brayford Pool. And the Brayford Pool in Lincoln, it was actually built by the Romans. The Foss Dyke actually connected the River Trent to the River Witham, and I think it just shows for how many years that we've actually used our rivers and our waterways, and they've been a key part of the community. To think of the generations that have viewed that particular river and the changes that have taken place. At one time it was used to transport wool as part of the wool trade, and later on in Lincoln it was used for the mills and the breweries. And I think the other interesting thing about Lincoln is at Lincoln Castle, that's actually the only place in the world where you can actually view one of the original Magna Carta documents along with the Charter of the Forest, and it was the clause 33 that enshrined that freedom of navigation. So I think for me, seeing that picture of my daughter in Brayford in Lincoln it's quite telling, really. There's a lot happening. But the other thing as well, what I look at when I see that photo is sometimes people will say, well, you've got access to plenty of water, you don't need any more access. But if you look in the back over her shoulder, you've got the motorised boats there. And she hates the wake as they're coming down. She hates it. It bobs her up and down. And I think, if you're out walking, you wouldn't necessarily go out walking on the pavement all the time. You want to be away from the motorised traffic. You want to be out in the countryside. And I think, getting the clarity in legislation, it clarifies that, not everybody wants to be on the flat water where there's motorised boats. There's also, we know ourselves how wide paddling is, all the different disciplines. So, this is why clear access, clear waters is so important, to get clarity on that legislation for the 21st century. And that's kind of where I'm at the moment. If there's any questions coming in, Dave.
Yeah, we've got some questions. Before we start on the questions, I'd like to just there's been a bit of chat going on in the chat box about ELM. Could you just sort of give us a bit more around that, what it means? And
the ELM side of things.
Yeah.
It's basically an environmental land management scheme, and that will replace the current common agricultural policy. So it's about how landowners are rewarded, how they are paid basically for managing their land. So the government are very much looking into this public good, that landowners should be paid for providing a public good. So that's how that access side of things fits in. And I guess traditionally from a conservation side of things, they may get paid for having headlands, for planting hedgerows, for putting trees in, for other habitat creations. This is around payment for improvements to access. So again, we're looking at trials, so not quite sure on the ins and outs of it, but it could be putting a new permissive path in down to the river. It could be putting a new launch platform in to access the river. It's all around those improvements to the water that we think could work well and would bring a lot of benefits.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Chantelle, could I ask you just to stop sharing your screen so people can see us when we're chatting? Okay, so the first question, which is a really nice question, and that's from Nicola, please.
Nicola Carroll.
Yeah.
Nicola Carroll.
Thanks. Thanks, Dave.
That doesn't sound like Nicola Carroll.
Yeah, it's her account. It's my. I'm on it. She's on another meeting at the moment. Yeah, the question was, you flashed up that sign of no canoeing, no access. Does British Canoeing want to see examples of all those things each time we come across them, even though they don't necessarily impede our paddling ability? Do you want to see those sorts of signs and locations of where they are?
I think that would be helpful if you're out and you've got your phone and you happen to take a photo and you have that location, then yeah, that would be great. We can have that, and we can keep a record of that. That would be really helpful. It gives us that picture of where these issues are happening, basically.
Yeah.
And it feeds in, you know, it can feed into the regional development team. It can feed into we have regional waterways advisors who deal with access issues locally, particularly if it's a misleading sign as well. You know, if it's something that might actually be on a public right of way. So certainly we'd be interested to see those. Yes, that would be great.
There is one locally, but it's hanging off. It's hanging off 2 strands of barbed wire, which is right across the river. So yeah, we'll send it in.
Yeah, send it in and send details of where that barbed wire is, and we can have a look into that as well.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, lovely. PY, you got 2 questions, 2 really interesting questions as well, please.
With the ELM, you're saying that the government will potentially pay farmers so that people can get access to the land. What if the landowner has already sold or leased the riparian rights to the fishing club?
Yeah, but it's something we're looking into at the moment. We're exploring it, and it's an option that we're putting on the table. It would be the landowner that would sign up to the scheme. So I guess the landowner would talk to the fishing club about that if they had that relationship together.
Because potentially that could block access if they've given the riparian rights, sold or leased the riparian rights away. I used to be a British Canoeing Access Officer for about 20 years. So I've had many of these debates, as you can imagine, with fishing concerns, several of them.
Yeah, so are you saying if the landowner's still got the rights but the fishing club are actually leasing?
If they've leased the rights, depending on your point of view with the law, and it is where you sit on the fence on that, they've leased the rights to access to the water to the fishing concerns. Okay, just food for thought as to where it's being dealt with. So
yeah, I think if you know, I think obviously we believe there's a right of navigation. That landowner would then be they would get the payment for improving the access. So if yeah, I think yeah, perhaps one for us to take on board. But I think that would be a positive if the landowner would be supportive of a scheme enabling that access. Then that would be a conversation between that landowner and the fishing club if that was their relationship.
Something entirely different. Many of us remember hunting, and for a while it was legal. Then Tony Blair pushed it forward to get it banned. He didn't push forward to get it banned. He put it forward to the House of Commons for a ban or not ban, because private members' bills over the years had occupied so much parliamentary time. It was the one subject that kept coming back and kept coming back on private members' bills, that governments of the day were having trouble finding time to get their own bills through. British Canoeing thought about adopting a similar policy. Everyone get their MPs to keep raising private members' bills to do the same.
I think we are exploring all options on how we engage and how we keep access on rivers, that profile high up. So yeah, we have talked about private members' bills.
One last cheeky third question. Sorry, Dave. Have British Canoeing thought about writing to every chief constable and asking them what is the instruction they've given their officers if a landowner was to call them and say, I've got people paddling on my river and they don't have permission? Do we know where the police actually sit?
That's not a piece of work that I've been involved with, but I can certainly take that back with me.
Just food for thought to see where the police sit. Yeah. Sorry, Dave.
No, that's fine. I was just trying to think of something funny to say about where policemen sit, but I don't know the full audience. So, for being ex-fire service, I'm gonna stay quiet with that one.
Can I add? John's next.
John Clark.
Hi, Chantelle. Just to pick up on one of your other points, and probably fairly minor in the discussion, but has there been any work into surveys, polls, etc., into how much paddling, I'm going to say in inverted commas, brings into the economy? Because I think one of the things that I'm going to lump the group, the fisher people, have is they've got very tangible cost model. You know, it costs us this much to access the river, times by X number of people, therefore we bring this much into this local economy. Whereas with paddlers, you don't necessarily get that. You know, we're going to the coffee shops, we're staying in the B&Bs and all that sort of stuff, but it's outside of the process. So I don't know whether there's some work that could be done as a kind of an X factor as to what it actually brings, what it's actually worth to the economy.
No, absolutely. And I think it would be really great to have that information to hand. We've had some kind of details from the Norfolk Broads on that side of things. But again, having that kind of bigger picture would be really helpful. There are obviously tourist spots, so there are some areas where obviously it would bring in more, but yeah, absolutely. And I think particularly, again, last year's staycations, this year looks like staycations are probably going to be on the cards again for a lot of people. We know a lot more people are out paddling, so you know, you put those two factors together, and I think the gut feeling is we know there's going to be a bigger contribution, but definitely having those figures would be really helpful to build that case. Just
another argument to put forward to the case, you know.
No, yeah, I think it is
a tangible, you know, money talks at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So
and for sure, and it certainly fits in with all the local authority side of things. I picked up about you know, paddlers shouting about all the stuff that we're doing in the local area. And I think that's really important when we're talking to local authorities who, you know, I've worked in the tourism side of things at the County Council at Lincolnshire here, and we had the Lincolnshire Waterways Partnership, which drew down funding to really reconnect people with the waterways in Lincolnshire. And I remember, you know, doing business surveys to have a look at the impact of the waterway and the additional tourism that it brought. So I think going forward as part of that green recovery, the whole sustainability agenda, I see that there's big opportunities there on that tourism side of things.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, John. Just a quick one. Clint, you said in the chat about sharing this with other canoe clubs. Afterwards, this is converted into a video and put onto our website and is available to anybody to view for free. So next question is Mark Yan, please. Keep it short, Mark.
Right, me in short. Yeah, last night I was on a call with the Outdoor Industry Association, Andrew Denton, and he was talking about lobbying in the Parliament, how many work, how hard it was. I don't see British Canoeing doing that. Is that because there are no funds for it? But we should maybe do it because it is really hard work. Could he maybe do it on your behalf?
No, I think there is a lot of lobbying that is happening, a lot of lobbying behind the scenes with the environment bill that's happening. There was when the charter was initially launched. So that is happening behind the scenes. That is something that we are very much involved with, and we're very much networking with Andrew Denton and a lot of other organisations on that outdoor industry side of things to really raise the profile. Like I said, with all the Brexit side of things, the pandemic, there's a lot of noise at the moment. So by working together with like the Ramblers and the BMC, it's really helping us all to raise that profile of access, and rightly so.
Lovely, thanks, Mark. Thanks, Chantelle. Next question is John Chewan. You're going to need to unmute yourself, John. No, you're still muted. No, you disappeared now completely. Okay, we'll give him a couple of seconds and there you go, John.
That's it. Right.
That's it, yeah.
I realised there's some new environmental advisors that have been sort of going through the process of interviews. I wondered how they would be integrated into the regions within the British Canoeing to support people at a local level.
Is this the sustainability advisor?
Yes, that's it. Yes.
Yeah, their advisors. That's on the sustainability side of things. British Canoeing is quite keen to develop a sustainability strategy. So those volunteers have been interviewed to be appointed to feed in on that side of things. From the clear access, clear waters side of things, we will be, and it's part of my work going forward, is rolling out more on that volunteer side of things. So we're really keen to get a clear access, clear waters champion in as many clubs as we can. And I was ready to launch that at the beginning of the year, do a soft launch with your regional development team, actually. And then we obviously went back into lockdown. So that kind of put a little bit of a pause on that volunteer side of things, but absolutely key that we have volunteers working in the local areas. And that is a piece of work that I will be working on as we go forward, hopefully in the next few weeks' time. And coming to speak to all of the regional development teams about and how we can support those volunteers in that role. But I see those roles as very much engaging in the paddle cleanup side of things, the access side of things, invasive species, and again, that whole engagement at a local level with the local authorities, you know, to raise issues and to work together to really highlight how, you know, how great paddling is, particularly, like, you know, obviously with some of the things that are happening in the Severn at the moment, it just highlights why having that, you know, someone showcasing all the great thing about paddling is so important.
I think you had another question, did you, John? A quick one.
Pardon? Sorry.
You have another quick question?
No, that it's.
Okay.
I made a mistake. I didn't write the question out.
Brilliant.
Properly.
Graham, quick question.
Hello, Charlotte.
Chantelle.
Okay? Sorry, I do apologise, Chantelle. Terrible memory,
right.
Dyslexia. I'm from Newark. So,
all right.
Hello, calling from Bristol now. I just wondered, with the landowners, are there any sort of tax exempt incentives for them, from it being from a mental health, well-being, or sort of from the sports angle for allowing people access along the waterways? Is there any angle in there for them?
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest with you. I think there's a lot of things on that health and well-being side of things. I know there's a lot of work coming up around that green social prescribing side of things. And I think this certainly picks up on those relationships again with local authorities, because it's normally through that public health side of things that those funding pots are accessed. So I think that kind of builds up that community link of paddling potentially with landowners, and that health side of things. What we do have for landowners to incentivise putting improvements in for paddlers is we're doing, I say we, the Canoe Foundation, which is our charity partner. They're actually offering grants at the moment for landowners to put new launch platforms in to increase the accessibility for paddling. So those grants are available. In fact, the closing date for the current funding round is actually at the end of this month. So they're there for things like new launch platforms for public access. So that could be, I guess, a farming kind of landowner, or it might be a parish council. It could could be a pub. We've had quite a few pubs interested in that side of things. They've often got good parking, good facilities, so that works quite well as well.
Okay, lovely. Thanks very much. Paul, Paul Austin, you've got a question?
Could I just add just very quickly the second part of my question, if that's okay?
Really quickly, Graham, because we're going to run out of time.
Yeah, just links in what John Clark was saying about with fishing, everybody knows you have to have a rod license. Could it not be connected with the canoeing, paddling, that you have to have a environmental agency license, which is the revenue generator?
I think on the regulated rivers at the moment, obviously you have to have your license, so that feeds into that side of things. I think on those unregulated rivers, obviously you don't need a license. I think that whole licensing issue, to get that clarity in legislation, I think we have to bear in mind that it's keeping the sport accessible to all, and you know, I think it could potentially put barriers to preventing people from getting involved if it became too costly.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Paul, have you got a question?
Yeah, sorry, I'll make it as quick as possible. Hello, Chantelle. I just think we need to learn from history. And when we look at other things where the average Joe has wanted access to the countryside, wanted access to the highway, actually campaigning takes years. People die before they get access there. The things that ultimately work are direct action. You know, I'm 50 now and I look back and I see this. We talk about the hunting, it was direct action that worked. You know, yes, lobbying the MPs, but also a lot of direct action. The mass trespasses back in the 30s that got people access to the countryside, direct action. The critical mass events to get cycle lanes and that in London, direct action, thousands of people turning up, making their voices heard. It's not to be pessimistic about what you're doing, because absolutely it's probably morally the right way to do it. But actually what works, you know, hate to say it, the landed gentry in the UK, our parliament is full of the landed gentry. They're not going to give up easily, especially in the shires and that sort of places. So we need to organise and we need to get very vocal, and we need the BCU to be standing there behind us and saying, come on, let's have a mass trespass. If we go to court with it, we're going to make some examples of this. Up the revolution, brother.
I think times are very different now. I think with the pandemic, the way that's played out, I think it has absolutely brought to the forefront how important having access to blue spaces is for our well-being. And I think that sits so well across so many government agendas. I think if there was some kind of mass trespass, I think that could play into the hands of others. So I feel, you know, and I think British Canoeing's view at the present time is that things are moving in the right direction. We're doing a lot of partnership work, which I'll pick up later on the invasive species, with a wide range of partners from the Rivers Trust to the Angling Trust. We are on the paddle cleanup side of things. We're doing a lot of lobbying on the plastic side of things coming off the back of the paddle cleanups. So I hear what you're saying. I think we're in a very different time now. I think the pandemic has absolutely brought home to government the cost of the pandemic to the nation, not only you know, with supporting businesses and that side of things, but I think our own health and well-being. And I think, you know, the fact that paddle sport has been allowed during this lockdown, you know, I think it's saying a lot that there is starting to be that change of.
Yeah, and I hope you're right, Chantelle. I fear that we are humans, we're all creatures of habit, and give it a year, this will be forgotten, and the landowners will actually be saying, the last thing I need now is a load of people traipsing across my land to get to rivers and what have you. And I'll finish with this point. I'd say, if you don't have deadlines or don't have target dates, you never hit anything. And BCU should set itself some achievement dates or some milestones to say, by X year, we will have 30% more access to rivers, so that the membership can look at it and people can look in and go, do you know what? We've achieved something. We hit that target. And if we don't hit that target, we need some things that we're going to say, right, if we don't hit this target, this is a way we're going to attack it a different way.
Very lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think just on that target around the access, it's the legal change that is required. So it's a gift that's a little bit out of our hands in that sense. And I think there'll be lots of things that influence and that potentially what governments are in, and there's a lot of things happening on that. So yeah, I think obviously we have our own targets and we are working hard on this. We're all really, really passionate about it. And it's something, you know, that we would all love to see, you know, as British Canoeing staff, but also on personal levels for all of us within the team.
Okay, thank you. Final question from Julia Tinker, please.
Hi, Chantelle. Can you hear me?
I can.
Hi. I just wondered, are you working with the Canal and River Trust on this? On the campaign?
We work with Canal and Rivers Trust on across a number of different areas. Canal and Rivers Trust was supportive of the Clear Access, Clear Waters Charter when we launched that, and we do a lot of work with them on projects, on canoe trails, looking at how we can improve paddling on the Canal and Rivers Trust. We're looking at invasive species with Canal and Rivers Trust. So yes, we are very much engaged with them at a local and a national level.
But not actually on the access issues. I mean, I know they manage a number of the smaller rivers, but I thought they might have a voice in terms of actually helping with the access.
I think the Canal and Rivers Trust do a lot to really champion their blue spaces, and I think a lot of the messaging they put out kind of supports our messaging. We know that a lot of the canals are you know, they run through some of the really deprived areas. They've got high populations, and I think a lot of the studies and the statistics that they provide around that can really support our campaign.
This was a With Dave production.